Hi there, and welcome to Be a Global Citizen, the podcast that explores the concept of global citizenship through the lens of value-creating education. My name is Scott Bauer, and I'm a SOCA researcher and educator. I hope you find the discussion, stories, and insights on this podcast to be valuable and inspiring as we strive to become global citizens who are committed to living a contributive life. Enjoy.
Hi, my name is Michael Miller. I live in New York City, and I am the Associate Dean at the Spitzer School of Architecture at the City College of New York. And I am thrilled to be here with you, Scott.
Hi, Michael. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I am so happy to have you. You have such a vibrant energy and such positivity that radiates all the time. And I've been very fortunate to have interacted with you both in person and also virtually for similarly related events revolving around a book that you were a contributor to about leadership.
Yes.
So very excited to hear more about that journey. But of course, you have experienced so many things, been in different industries, and you live in New York as well. And I from what I've heard, New York is a pretty wild place. And, given that I'm from California,
we'll have to get you here more and you can experience it too. I'm deeply grateful to you for the invitation. I'm really excited to be here. And yes, it's been great to spend so much time with you in the last couple of weeks. It's a real privilege. So thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And, the feeling is mutual. So this is really your reflective space, though. I really want to have you just lean into it and share anecdotes, stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, but whatever, that comes up from either the personal realm, the professional realm, I would love to hear more about your journey as an educator and what brought you to the work that you're doing right now.
Sure. No, it's funny. I was an actor for a long time, and I'm very aware right now of what I'm doing with my mouth and my sort of nervous tics. So I apologize if you're like, why is Michael doing that funny thing with his mouth? My nerves, they'll still ease away in a bit.
No, he's expressing himself. That's
I'm
what's
expressing
happening.
myself, right. I have had I would have what I lovingly and sort of proudly refer to as a sort of strange, life and sort of professional journey. So I do live in New York City, and I've been here for, I think it'll be 27 years next month, which is absolutely wild.
Congratulations.
And I thank you.
You can technically live anywhere, right? Because if you made it in New York, you can make it anywhere.
You can make it anywhere. I came to New York. I was born and raised in Newark, Delaware, the first state, which was a sort of, a really sweet, kind of nice, I would call it very normal suburban upbringing, which was great. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for a long time. My dad was a cop. He worked for the Delaware State Police, and I have an older brother, and I had a great family. My childhood was great. I had a very, happy upbringing in Delaware, but I was a little bit of the black sheep in the family because it it became pretty obvious pretty early on that I really was into movies and theater and the arts. And that's, while people in my family appreciate that, it was, all consuming for me. So, sort of long story short, the bug bit me in probably around middle school or so, where I was like, oh, I think I want to do this forever. And so I sort of made plans to do that, and I got my first professional gig at our local dinner theater, and then was in a lot of community theater productions. And the reason I say this is because so much of the way that I move through life and relate to other people and how I approach pretty much everything came from my upbringing in theater. You are with a wonderful, loving group of quirky people. Everyone has a skill. Everyone has a talent. And on stage or off, and you all have to come together to put on a show. And that sort of collective, community spirit, it is integral to your work as a performer or a technician or whatever you're doing in the theater. So I was very fortunate to have those experiences. I had a lot of experiences in the chorus, meaning not the lead, not featured necessarily, just like a person in the ensemble. And then I had a couple of lead or featured roles. And then I applied to school. Like I was going to be, I was going to be an actor in New York City. And I got into Tisch School of the Arts, to Cap 21, which was at the time sort of the premier musical theater studio in the country, and had the best training and the best experience and met the best people and the best mentors. And it shaped my young adult life and my professional life. So my entire way of being and moving through the world was forged in the theater. And while I'm no longer professionally involved in the theater, I carry that with me. I mean, every day. I mean, it's just part of who I am. And I very much credit that and those experiences and those people and that training with formation of who I am as a professional. So long time in the theater, did that professionally in New York for a long time. And as most people can imagine, that is a tough world to exist in. And I am what they call a character actor. And so that's like a double tough thing in this. And I just, I was getting cast, but I wasn't sort of catching on in the way that professionally I would have um, hoped, and that was going to financially sustain me for a while. So I was like, you know what I got to do? I have so many other things that I'm interested in, so many other things that I want to do. And there came a point where I sort of slowly stepped away and did some semi-professional stuff, and then went back to school and ended up in the higher education space, which is where I am now. And I love that work. It's deeply, deeply fulfilling. And that led me to a master's degree and then a doctorate back at NYU. I have 2 degrees from NYU. I love NYU. And that experience took my career and put it on steroids in the way that I see and move. So now I feel like I have, this like expert toolbox to utilize and bring change and impact other people, and try and make the world a better place, at least in New York City and City College right now. And that experience at NYU has really led to a lot of sort of ultimately, I mean, it's led me to you. I mean, one of our dear colleagues, Dr. Frank Garce, those connections that I made there have sort of opened my world. And you mentioned the book, The Trinity of Leadership. 2 of the dearest people in my life, Trish Beck and Denise Nelson Nash, had this wacky idea and got a bunch of us together that were all colleagues from that program. And we wrote a book about leadership. And that led us to you, and that led us here. And one thing I will say about Denise and Trish, and sort of in this conversation, we don't, and Frank, you don't meet a lot of very dear friends as you get older. I think we all would agree it's kind of hard to make really dear, true friends in your adult years. And I've been very lucky to have added a couple of people to like the really dear, true friends to my ranks. And that has very much been because of my experience at NYU in this program and professionally. So yeah, it's weird to talk about myself this way, but that is sort of the, that's kind of that's the short version of professionally, like where I am now. And I'll say this, my current position, I'm the associate dean at a professional school of architecture in New York City, and a public school of architecture in New York City, which is incredibly important to say. And for a long time, we were the only public school of architecture in New York City. There's another smaller program at another school, CUNY school, actually. Our mission is everyone deserves an education, an affordable education, an excellent education. And every day to be able to get out of bed and come to work and make that happen for mostly the children of New York, like the kids of New York City, the people of New York City, are mostly our student body, but we get them from um, all over the world, and we also get them from all over the country. It's primarily like a Northeast school, but um, we get to do really great work every day and train these young people to go out and make their cities and the urban environment and their homes. So a lot of my students go back to where they were raised or born, the country, the state where they have family, and they want to make long and impactful change there, and we help them train and do that. So it's really kind of amazing to be able to do it. So, and I teach. I have I teach at NYU in the program that I did my doctoral studies in, and I teach a super nerdy research methods class, which is sort of like dissertation prep. It's like, let's dig into your problem and build that out and make sure that your literature review and sort of the foundational work of what you're going to explore and research is really solid, so that you can have a really exciting study. And I love that. I do love to teach, and I have taught public speaking and some other things for undergrads in different places, but I do enjoy that work as well. So yeah, that's the like 2 cent tour of my professional life.
No, thank you so much, Michael. What a
Yeah.
wonderful tour that was, and it's really evident that you've done so much over your career, and you've started off in theater, but it sounds like
Hmm.
the theater never left you, even though now
No.
your focus is in higher ed administration as well as teaching at universities. One thing though that really stood out to me, the way you were describing how theater really brings together quirky people with different skill sets,
Yes.
and that everyone comes together, as you said, to put on a show. And
Yeah.
in a big way, that's what universities function to do, right? People lending their different strengths.
Absolutely.
There's an organization, there's a certain choreography into it, and
Absolutely.
people need to put on a show, right? For those who are
Absolutely.
seeking, further education. So it just seems that even though maybe at face value, right, you might think, wow, that these things are completely unrelated. There's so much of that like shared DNA that is your strength in a school of architecture, right?
Yeah, I appreciate you framing it that way, Scott. I will say for a long time. I mean, what does that really mean? But for a long time after my transition, sort of out of the professional theater and into like sort of figuring out like what the next step was and going back to school, and I was a little lost, and I didn't see the connections, and I didn't really. I thought I sort of had to start over. I didn't realize that I was bringing my entire self and my skill set and all of these things along with me. There was a sort of, I wouldn't call it a dark period. I wasn't lost. Uh, I wasn't aware or in celebration of or recognition of all of the gifts and skills that I was bringing along with me. And I just didn't understand how it was going to translate yet. And slowly, uh, I started to see like, I was like, oh, I'm really good at this thing, and other people are not. Like, they have other strengths, but they're not good at X. I'm really good at X. And because when you're in the theater, everybody's a good singer, everybody's a good actor, everybody's a good dancer. It sort of, relatively speaking. But when those skills, or when you're in a totally different sector, let's say, you start to see it in a different light. And so then I was like, oh, I really bring something totally unique to what I do every day. And oh, right, everything I'm doing is some kind of skill that I got. So it slowly sort of dawned on me over a couple of years. And I'm like, oh, right, all of this is just what I learned. I joke that I have a degree in listening. I mean, that's really, an acting degree is basically a degree in listening, and sort of listening to people and figuring out what they want and how you're going to get what you want. And that is, we do that every day, every minute when we interact with another human being. What do they want? What do I want? How are we going to get there? And it's not necessarily super dire circumstances like in a play or a film. But that is literally how we move through the world. You don't move through the world by yourself as a solo act. You are constantly interacting and dealing with and um, negotiating in a way other people's needs and wants. And so it was really exciting to kind of finally sit and own that skill set. And now I lovingly refer to it as my superpower. And I mean, we all have a superpower. Our lived experience and what we do and what we do well and how we bring that to the world. That is our own individual superpower. But it took me a little while to figure out, oh, right, a university is just like a giant production. Or organizations are sort of giant productions, and everybody needs, for lack of a better word, sort of a good stage manager. Everybody needs to know what they're doing and be supported and have great resources so that they can do their best work, and that supports your work. And then, it is sort of a collective, sometimes more than others. Some organizations and some things you're doing, it does tend to be a little more, not so much solo, but, you know, power is sort of dispersed in different ways, let's say that. But to your point, it ultimately is kind of all the same thing. And it's really joyful to get into something and um, bring the thing that makes you wholly unique that wouldn't be there if you weren't there, right? I mean, think about all the sort of good that you do in the world, like you, Scott, like you, that all of the magical things that you make happen. And like, think about not being in those places and those things not happening and those people that you meet and have met and touched and all of that. Like, it would not happen if it weren't for you. It might happen in a different way, but it might not be impact. We are sort of we're all individual change agents. But the magic is that like only we can do the thing, that we do. And so it sounds a little corny, but it's true.
Mm. And you're uniquely cast to fulfill the current role that you're in at the university, but also extrapolating
Yeah.
it even further. And I feel like I touched on this in the last conversation that we had for at the
Mm.
Harvard School of Education.
Yeah.
But we can think of life itself as this kind of grander stage upon which we
Yeah.
are the main lead of our own life, right? Our own
Mm-hmm.
drama, human drama unfolding before our
Yeah.
eyes. And
Yeah.
I think what really needs to happen and what, you've articulated for yourself, like going through this kind of like back and forth reflection, where am I at? Where am I trying to go? What's fulfilling? But ultimately you make a decision that this is the value that I bring by showing up
Yeah.
fully as myself, bringing everything along. This is what's going to make this environment better. And I find that, even that is a skill itself, right? Of like the kind of greater self-awareness, greater sense of self-worth. But could you kind of maybe expound upon that a little bit more? Because I find that it's very broad, but it's so difficult and it's so necessary, regardless of what job or profession you find yourself in.
Oh, I mean, 100%. And uh, yeah, I mean, can you imagine the world if everybody sort of owned their power and leaned into the magic that they bring to everything? I mean, the world would be an entirely different place. So your point is well made that like not everyone is either able to do that or chooses to do that. And whatever that reason may be. I I don't know if it's getting older. I don't know if it's just sort of the unique makeup of my being or the way my parents raised me. Although I definitely think there's a big part of who I am and way I approach life because of the way that I was raised. But I don't know. It's sort of some weird alchemical, spiritual. I don't know. I think I can definitely point to certain things. Let me put it this way. I don't derive sort of joy or pleasure from doing the least or not contributing, or like that is a very sort of boring life. It's also, I don't find that to be a very helpful life. I don't find that to be in service of anyone. And so the position that I have at the City College of New York right now in my division, it's sort of grown out of. I'm the first associate dean in our division. That role didn't exist prior to my being there. So all of the sort of things that I'm interested in and that I do well, and how I want to help students and faculty and staff sort of achieve their goals and support them and make sure that everyone is sort of well and high functioning. I mean, that directly kind of comes out of what we are talking about. Is it's been my desire to sort of shape or change or uplift or better or refine or challenge or push the system or what we had or didn't have at work to sort of a higher, place, whether that's more efficient or whether that's um, in better servitude of the people that are in the organization, whatever that may be. But that's a direct like result of the way that I approach work. And that's not to be boastful. That's like it literally after a series of years being at Spitzer, almost 12 years. Um, and I don't really know. I remember saying, I think I'm pretty sure I said this to you at Harvard. I don't really know how else to be. I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to get out of bed and not put my students first. I don't. Um, it's strange to me and sort of against my I don't know about moral compass. That's not really what I'm looking for to say, but like my being is sort of resistant to not doing the kind of work that is going to be. And look, it can be transformational for the day. It doesn't have to be transformational, you know, for someone's life. And like it can be in that day. We're just going to make sure that today is the best day possible for so and so. Or we're going to get a scholarship for the student that needs it today. That's the thing today. Or we're going to figure out how to, fix this broken system. Or we're going to, bring in the therapy dogs today. Or we're going to find a new way to change the wellness programming so that our students aren't so stressed out. We're going to, though it can be relatively a small gesture that changes the organizational culture just a bit. And then that sort of ripples out to one student or all students or some students. And that can change someone's day. It can change the way they experience the school. I mean, that's the work.
I find like what you're articulating is this kind of like based on values like that were deeply rooted when you were growing up or even into like your formative years in college, but it's produced who you are in like set ways of like, this is how I operate. This is what needs to be done. And then all of the work that you're bringing into job position, it's like the tinkering, right? That you speak a lot about in the book. So it's important, but it's also not kind of the same revolutionary, groundbreaking thought process that people think of like, I'm going to go in and fix everything, right? But actually the tinkering mindset is very much going to be like kind of redirecting, kind of, influencing one part of it, but it's with a larger perspective in mind. And so I feel like, to get more at the question that I was asking, it's like basically like, well, how did you get to a point where you were able to have this deeper sense of self-worth, or how did this work ethic or this moral compass, quote unquote, whatever the phrasing of it is, come about? You said that it probably ties in with aspects of how you were raised and with your family. So perhaps maybe this might be a good time to share a little bit about what were the major influences of your family as you were growing up. How did that contribute to these like deeper values?
Yeah, well, the sort of, my hero, I guess, if you were to ask, like, it would be my dad. And my dad was a Delaware State policeman for 20 plus years. And my parents are very service oriented people. and they have a sense of, justice and right and wrong in the world. And they were not shy about sharing that with my brother and myself to make us good citizens of the world. And I mean, I actually think that phrase was used a lot. Like we are going to raise good citizens of this country and of the world. And like it was really important to them. And that was infused by my grandparents on both sides. I mean, um, my dad has devoted his entire life to public service. And he's busier now in retirement than he was when he was in law enforcement. And when he left the state police, he went into law enforcement and worked for the Attorney General of the state of Delaware. And my dad volunteers, my mom volunteers. Their favorite thing is they go into the local public schools and they help kids read. And my books were a huge reading was a huge thing in our family. And I mean, my mother she still has most of it, like the books that were sort of influential to me and my brother's, upbringing. And books are still like a big Christmas gift for us. We're big readers in our family. And my parents are both students of history, particularly American history and political history. They're big wonks about that. And the sort of right and wrong and the moral arc of justice and seeing people, for who they are and what they bring to the world and being tolerant and accepting and welcoming of everyone. I mean, that was just the thing in the Miller family. It was like no question. And I am deeply grateful to my parents for the way that they instilled all of that. There's it and the sort of right and wrong of the world. Like bad things happen to good people, good things happen to bad people. Like not be sort of shy about sort of the injustice and the wildness that can happen in the world, but to sort of you have to be the force that works against those kinds of things. Like you need to be an engine or a kind of a constant force for good and change. And it just was like that's just the way that it was in our in our family. And what I have realized is that's not the case for everyone that I know. Now that's not to say that I have friends that were, raised, like with no morals or compass or anything, but the things that were really important in our household were not necessarily the things that were focused on important in other households. And that's fine. That's just a different upbringing. But I can absolutely sort of directly tie my deep sort of pull to service definitely to my father and my mother. But my father is like, that's really that's just his thing. So literature and history and art and how it all sort of ties together and learning from that and moving forward. I mean, that absolutely has shaped the way that I approach the world. You're not a bystander. You're an active sort of person in life in the world. And look, things are kind of crazy right now. I think, no matter what side, ideologically, politically, however you want to cut it, the world is pretty wild right now. And sure, it can be easier to sort of stick your head under the covers and want to, not get out of bed in the every day. But I don't know. That's just not the way that's not the way we roll in the Miller family. So, yeah, that's that's a direct line to who I am, why I do what I do, and how I see things in my personal and professional life. For sure, 100%, no question.
Oh, I appreciate you sharing all of that, Michael. And your parents sound like amazing, just loving and brilliant people. And
John and Sue, they're great.
Shout out to John and Sue.
Great.
And really, I just wanted to also kind of point out a few additional things because the sense of justice, I think, is really important. Being able to
Yeah.
make decisions that are rooted in, it's not just their words, but
Yeah.
they back it up with their actions, right? I
Yeah.
think that that's more and more, becoming an issue where everyone seems to just be shouting louder and louder into the echo chamber
Yeah.
that is social
Yeah.
media, and
Yeah.
seemingly frustrated by a lack of kind of return of maybe what they're hoping for, or things changing and not seeing that pan out. But being able to have a service oriented mindset where you're in the community, you're listening to the community, you're contributing to the
Yeah.
community, you're doing what you can for your own children so that they have these deeper morals and values, but you're also espousing that in like a library where you're reading books to other kids, right, that are not yours,
Yeah.
and helping out where you can, where maybe
Yeah.
like in like a grocery or on the side of the road, but like teaching lessons, and just not with any care of like transactions, of just in the
Yeah.
spirit of like, you
Well,
need to be a good citizen too.
yeah, and kindness.
And
I mean, I
kindness. Yeah.
think one of the big things that I took away from my upbringing, but also the thing that just sort of it kind of sits in my spirit these days. I mean, we're just not kind to people. We're like you say, the echo chamber, the social media. I mean, we just get online, or we talk to people in a way that's so disrespectful and nasty. And I mean, our political leaders are doing it, and leaders of industry. And I mean, people are so nasty to one another. And I think we've lost so much human connection. And I think you could, look, I'm sure, I know there are studies done on it, but I'm sure there will be more, smartphones and tech, and, the ways that we had to interact with one another in the last like 20 some years. I mean, it's changed really quickly, in a lot of ways, sort of tech and the person to person connection. Um, Everything is so fast. It's so, and instant gratification. And I sort of don't know any other way to be, but like you, we have to sort of stop and pause and be kind to one another. And you don't need to get the last word in. You don't need to tear somebody else down. And, sometimes you need to pause and think, okay, well, why is this person so like angry and hurt, and how, like, this sometimes happens with my students. You get a student, I talk about it in the book, actually. You get a student that's like labeled quote unquote difficult, right? And the student maybe is being self-destructive, and maybe is being, disrespectful, and maybe is doing, but there is a human being in there. And my students, their life extends beyond the four walls of the Spitzer School of Architecture. They live in New York City. They have a family. They maybe are an immigrant. They might be a DACA student. They might have a job. They might be taking care of their grandmother. They might be taking care of their sibling. I mean, life is lifing before, during, and after class, right? And one of the things that I have really tried hard to do for everyone that is sort of student facing it, wherever I've been, is to remember that there's a human being in there, right? And sometimes people are just really awful and difficult, but a lot of times, especially with students, there's something else going on. And if you can be patient enough, and you can focus on that individual human being's well-being, what they need, you can impact them and possibly change their trajectory in life with just, a couple more minutes of talking to them, or, what's really going on? Are you okay? Tell me about that. Why didn't you make it to class? Or what was the reason? And you just have to kind of like poke and chip away, and then you can usually find out what's really going on. So I kind of, coming back to what you were saying, I mean, I think that kindness and human interaction, and looking somebody in the eye and really asking how they are, and like being in a moment, and like taking a breath, and like taking somebody else's sort of spirit and being and humanity in. And we're just not doing that. Certainly not as Americans. But that is so critical. And I think, if I can be the person that can have somebody kind of stop and pause and rethink and say, oh, maybe there's another way to do this. That is worth a day's work for sure. That's worth getting out of bed. That's worth going to work that day. So I think I learned again that would come back to my family, my parents, my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles. That's just kind of the way that we roll, I guess you would say.
I love that. And I 100% I'm on board with that. I want to join the club, the Miller Club
Yeah.
family, and just be like, yeah, that's how we roll. We
Yeah,
lead
we
with
have to.
kindness. We
Yeah.
back up, we walk the talk and all that. But I love this connection with kindness, the human connection side of it, in relation to what it means to foster good citizens, especially in these
Hmm.
very turbulent times that we're living in, where
Yeah.
negativity seems to be more and more the default that we're seeing,
Yeah.
and lack of tolerance or even desire to try to understand is becoming more of the norm. But you articulated, at least my understanding of it, was this way of just modeling the kind of behavior you want to see. And I find that is, as an educator, leading with that and saying, well, maybe you've been misunderstood. You haven't been listened to for much of your life, but here I am. I want to be here for you. I want to be fully present. And that definitely stays with them. And it gives them reference point of like other possibilities, of other ways
Yeah.
of connecting, especially
Other
when,
possibilities.
yeah, yeah, they've been disconnected for who knows how long. Maybe not 100% disconnected all the time, but I think that humans
Yeah.
are wired to be connected 100% of the time. And we are
100%.
getting so much less than that. And it's not
Yeah.
fair. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think we are all about othering right now. And uh, we are not very good and have not been good for a long time, I think, in welcoming a curiosity and not even tolerance, a curiosity about the other. And that could be the other thing, that could be the other person, that could be the other cuisine, that could be another language. But we fear. I mean, we are literally being told to fear the other by people at the highest ranks of our political system right now. Um, Literally, like those people, that group, this person, they are bad. You should be afraid of them. And if we don't get rid of them, or if we don't do something about them, you and your life will be impacted in a negative way. And it's scary, but it's also exhausting. And it doesn't, it is completely um, antithetical to the way that so many people function and what they believe, but it's dangerous. And, but I think that it all the more reason that, we have to be supportive of our young people. I mean, so I'm in higher education. I say young people. I mean, they're younger than me, so I can say young people. But, like you were talking about modeling, and I think modeling is really, I think it's critical. When you have someone who's sort of suspicious of people, suspicious of adults, or suspicious of people in power, and it's like, do what I say, not what I do. So when you can model it, or you can really show them that you're willing to do something different, that's really powerful. I would say this is somewhat related. I think you also have to be a disruptor. I think we have to sometimes go in and like rip out the wiring a little bit. Like, you know, we're not doing it that way anymore, or like that is not getting us anywhere. And it may not be harmful, but it's certainly not beneficial. And so I think we look to leaders in lots of different capacities to be disruptors. And I think it's a great way to make, you got to get in there and shake things up a little bit sometimes. And you said something earlier, I was going to comment on it. It doesn't need to be earth shattering, change or like super disruptive stuff where an entire system is, crumbles and we're building some new scaffolding and structure. It can be relatively small, but contextually impactful or large, right? And uh, it's not necessarily possible for individuals to go out every single day and like cause like earth shifting change, but sometimes. But the change is it's like slow and steady wins the race. You got to get up every day. You got to do the work. You got to find your partners in that work. You got to believe in that work. You got to do it every day, even when it's hard. Like that's the work. The work is the sort of the constancy of it, and not necessarily trying to make a super sort of uh, not a revolution. It's not about a revolution or a super disruptive necessarily. So that was one thing I wanted to say. But yeah, I think that's um yeah, sort of modeling and being disruptive, and I'll go back to being kind.
Mm.
I just think, I don't know. It's so important.
And all of those things come from a place of like your own positionality and you taking an action. And
Yeah.
so there's this feeling of empowerment of, well, I can't control what that person over there is going to say, who's othering and doing all sorts of
Yeah.
nasty things, but I can, emanate this kindness. I can choose how I want to show up in this situation, and
And make a change. I mean,
make a change. Hmm.
yeah. I think a lot of people don't. I think especially now, I'm sure you've heard people say this. Well, what can I do? I don't vote. What can I do? Like I hear that from people. I'm like, what are you talking about? You can't vote. Well, my vote doesn't make it if I don't, or if I don't, what can I do? That has also been instilled in sort of like, I would say a lack of, we don't teach civics anymore, really. People don't really know how government works and how collective, power is how powerful that can be. And so there, we could talk about that all day. I think that's an entirely other, separate podcast. But recognizing that you can sort of chip away and you do have power and you can be the model. You're absolutely right. I can't control what anybody else is going to say or do or think about me or do what they say or do about me or what they say or do for someone else. But I can control what I can do. So yeah, I wish more people, it's such a basic tenet, and yet I think a lot of people don't own or recognize that power that they have. Um, so
Yeah. Well, I wanted to also just kind of add on to the previous bit that we were talking about. We were talking about your
mhm.
parents and how they were very intentional about raising good citizens of the country, good citizens of the world.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
curious, does that all that we've spoken about in terms of like good citizenry, having kindness, disrupting, modeling good behavior, right? Volunteer, like service oriented. Does
mhm.
that track for what you would understand a global citizen to be? How does
Yeah.
that concept fit for you in this moment, especially with all the othering that's happening?
I think one of the things I would sort of add to that list, I certainly think that those things are part of being an excellent global citizen. I think it's required. I mean, I think the thing that I would add to that is like an unslakable curiosity about things that, uh, you know, I don't know about this thing, or I see this thing, and as opposed to being like, ugh, or othering it, leaning into it and being like, oh, what is that? Or tell me more about that. And so I think the curiosity about the differences in, um, it's funny. I sort of think of this as like of the American standpoint of like, we are not the only country that exists in the world. And most Americans don't travel and will never travel. And so I sort of think of it as in the global context of like, there are literally other countries and other people and other things. But then all of the sort of richness that sort of exists in all of that. So like language and art and culture and food and um, behavior and the law and government and religion and all of the things, to if you can be curious about that, um, and even if it's just like, I don't, that's kind of odd to me. Tell me about that, as opposed to like, ew, gross, or that's wrong, or um, you know, that I think is really critical to the never-ending curiosity, and also sort of the desire to wander a little bit and explore and realize that the world is much bigger than your four walls of your home, or the confines of your town or your city. And I've been very lucky to, travel a little bit. I've traveled here and there a little bit. And you and I were talking about this at Harvard, like sort of off the record, not officially, but I had the great privilege of traveling to Japan last year. And it was like life altering. It was just life altering. And I will be there again in November. And I've started taking Japanese, and like the sort of joy of taking up something that is incredibly difficult. Japanese language is incredibly difficult. To do that at sort of like a later stage in life, and the desire to sort of learn that so that I can be in a place and communicate better with the people that are there, right? And not expect them, like, that experience alone is really exciting. For me, I'm really excited to get back and sort of test my skills. But because we had such an incredible, I mean, it's just, I can't even describe it. It was just like, it just shook me to my core how it's such a good example for me of like, there is so much out there that we don't see, or maybe about. I mean, maybe you do have some understanding of a culture, or a city or a town, but to see it in person and to smell it and to feel it and to
Mm.
touch it and to see the like, oh, that building over there is older than my entire country. Like, that thing has been around longer than like any organized anything in my, country has ever been. Like, that's amazing. And so to me, very much being a global citizen is um, a curiosity, a sort of urge to, because I was that kid that was like, why? I always asked, like, why? Tell me more about that. Why? I mean, my friends would call me nosy. I mean, I'm super nosy. If we sit down and we start, I mean, I sort of did it to you at Harvard. I was like, tell me about yourself, Scott. Where are you from? Tell me, that's what I want. All I want to do is like talk to somebody and find out what they do and what makes them tick and where they're from. Um, and I think that is critical to um, understanding that you are part of a much larger system, place, and that everybody has something to contribute. And oftentimes people have something to contribute that is going to be more impactful, or more impactful than something that you can offer, because your perspective it can only go so far. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I mean, I really like that sort of unslakable, unshakable, never-ending curiosity.
Mm.
The sort of nomad, not necessarily nomad, but like the nomadic itch.
Mm.
That there's so much out there. So
Yeah.
that is, when I think of a global citizen, those are sort of two things that I
Mm.
would add, besides like the kindness and the impact, all the other things that I think
Wow.
being a good citizen, as what my parents were referring to as like an American citizen, right? But also I would add that to a world citizen.
I love
So
that. Thank you so much. The
you're
curiosity part,
welcome.
the exploring part, the wonder of it all,
Yeah.
and the word adventure kept popping into my head as you were describing your time in
Yeah.
Japan. And I find that,
Yeah.
adventures are not necessarily a very neat and like linear pathway,
No.
but so much of it just kind of unveils itself to you as you walk along the path. And to be, shocked, to be like blown away, to be like, brought to tears, to be, joyful. There's so many
Yeah.
emotions that are going to surface. But I think, it takes courage to also walk down that path of curiosity that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So I think that,
Yeah.
sometimes maybe it's a case of people don't know what they're missing. But also I do think, and this is maybe one, point that we'll kind of end on before I ask you the last
Yeah.
question, but I
Sure.
do think that there is a lot that still remains undiscovered, even in our own hometowns, where we think we've seen it
Oh,
all. And I find that when you go
yeah.
abroad and you have that life changing, everything gets turned upside down, and then you come back, you're changed. Like the
Yeah.
city didn't really change, really, but you did, and suddenly you're discovering things. You're asking why about this and that, and then you're able to extract even more joy and have your own adventure in the most unlikely of places, which is your hometown that you thought
Your
you figured out
hometown.
a long time ago.
Yeah, Scott, that's so well said. I mean, I think for me, I can give you, I can't in this moment think of something specific, but I'll tell you specifically with Japan, like seeing the way that the Japanese people sort of relate to one another and nature and their work, their culture, their like the way that there's sort of pride and connection about their space, their urban space, their historical space, their food, one another. It's incredibly eye opening. And so then you come back here to the States and the city, and I think I slowed down a little bit, and I think that that curiosity was sort of like, maybe I'll go down this street today, or like I'm gonna, it'd be really interesting to go to that exhibit that I probably wouldn't have gone to at, or I'm gonna try this restaurant. Like, it's something I can't necessarily put my finger on it, but I think realizing that there is to exactly to what you say, there's something um, that you can discover in the space that you occupy every day, all day. And if you're just like a little more curious at home, and if you're just a little more adventurous at home,
Hmm.
you
And then,
can, yeah, go ahead, say it.
sorry to cut you off, but I was going to
No,
say, and
it's
then
fine.
that also brings us full circle to the whole modeling and being like,
Yeah,
like when you were learning, when you were discovering, when you were enjoying life, people
yeah,
around you are going to take notice, and they're going to want to be
do
around
too.
you. They're going to want
It's
to,
infectious.
yeah, it's very infectious. So, this whole conversation has been infectious, and I've learned so
Oh,
much more
thanks, God.
about you, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I really appreciate you taking this time and being
Oh,
very
it's my
thoughtful
pleasure.
about all the different twists and turns of your journey, and also giving us some really concrete things to think about as it relates to global citizenship in the times that we're living in. So I wanted to ask you one last quick question. And so book,
Yeah.
movie recommendation, anything come to mind?
Yeah. So we didn't get into it much, but I'm sort of obsessed with animals. I always have been. And I am reading Ben Goldfarb's Eager. Do you know Ben Goldfarb? Okay, I have it right here. I will show it to everybody. Ben Goldfarb is sort of like a nature writer, historian. He's fantastic. And he has this book called Eager, which is the surprising secret life of beavers and why they matter. And like beavers, the fuzzy,
Is that the
water
phrase
creatures.
eager McBeaver? Does he explain that?
Eager beavers. Well, sort of, yeah. The whole book is about how these amazing creatures can create an entire ecosystem, or
Mm,
if they are present, and if they are, let's say, hunted for their fur almost to near extinction, like we did, they can change, and their absence can change and affect an entire ecosystem.
right.
So these like little fuzzy, chunky things with their giant tails and their huge teeth, like they can literally alter an entire landscape, create um, huge biodiversity. It's like they're literally like sort of like little global citizens. I immediately
I
thought of
love
this
that.
book when you asked. Like they literally change everything,
Oh, I
and
need to read
our
this.
relationship to them and science. The book it's fantastic, and it's also really well written. It's very funny. And he actually came to speak in the fall at work, And I'm such a nerd. Like before his talk, I just like walked up to him and I was like, Mr.
Book
Goldfarb,
sign.
I love your book about beaver. No, I didn't even ask him to sign it. I was just like, I love your book about beavers. And then he was like, oh, thanks, man. And I was like, okay, great, bye. And I walked away. I just
Oh,
wanted to
you didn't
tell
get
him
him
like
to
that's
sign the book?
no, I feel weird about that stuff. It's more
Mm,
important for me to go up to someone and say like, thank you. Like
acknowledge that, yeah.
it's thank you for your
Mm,
work. Like after a show and a stage door to just be like, thank you for your work. I
mm,
never ask for pictures or signatures, but like I am acknowledging thank you for your work.
mm.
That's another little tidbit. Like thank people for their work. Thank people for their
Yeah,
contributions. So
right. Wow. Oh, I definitely
eager,
want to read
Ben
that.
Goldfarb.
I'm
Oh,
eager
it's
to
great.
read Eager. And
Yeah, it's
actually,
great.
just this is a quick aside, but on the flight back from Boston to LA, I watched the movie Hopper, and it's about like
Oh,
beavers. Yeah.
it's so
And
good.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was great. And so it just
so
made me
good.
think about like how important the beavers are, and they're like a pivotal
Truly.
part of the
Yeah.
ecosystem.
This
So
gets like really nerdy into why. It's really fun.
okay. Okay. Yeah. I want to read that. So thank you so much, Michael. And it's just been a
Oh, God,
joy to have
thanks.
you here, and wanted to give
You're
you
the
the last
best.
word. Last word. Any thoughts? Any final send offs?
Um, be kind to people, travel, and read Eager by Ben Goldfarb, and tell people thank you. Yeah, that's what I would say.